To draw shadows from a natural light source. Oh, by the way, any shadows from natural light on Earth, the sun's rays are considered to be parallel. You know that the sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth, and you know the sun's rays do radiate out. But at 93 million miles away, those that reach the Earth are, for all of our purposes, are absolutely parallel. So the sun's rays are considered to be parallel when drawing shadows on Earth. To draw shadows from artificial light, you really need three things. You probably would be best off if you were to draw, if I can find a place to draw this here. If we were to draw, let's say, a horizon line like this, and let's indicate the sun up here. Here's the sun, 93 million miles away. And directly below it on the horizon, let's indicate there a shadow vanishing point. Let's use the abbreviation SVP, shadow vanishing point, right there. Now, if we had two poles in the ground, these poles are not necessarily the same height, but there's two poles here, one here and say one over here. Let's see if we can draw their shadows. One of the things about positive sun that's a little bit of a problem, the shadows sometimes run too long, so I've got to make sure that the poles are short enough that the shadows will remain on the paper. Okay, so here's two poles sitting on the ground. Let's draw a line from the shadow vanishing point through the base of the pole. Well, here's the rule. The shadow vanishing point gives the direction of the shadow. The shadow vanishing point gives the direction of the shadow. The source, that's the sun up here, is called the source. The source gives the length of the shadow. By drawing from the source through the top of the pole, this will show me the extent of the shadow on the ground. So for those two poles, the shadows are right here, and right here. Now this situation is called positive sun. This is a positive sun shadow. We also have another instance where the sun is behind, and that's a little more difficult to communicate. When the sun is behind the viewer, we call that negative sun. And the way that's plotted is, let's show it an example here. I'll show a horizon line right here, and two poles again, here, and the other one. So there's two poles here like this. And over here is the shadow vanishing point. But this time, the line to the source goes straight down like this. And what we have here is what we call the negative sun. Negative sun. Now, wait a minute. How can you have the sun down below the horizon? Well, what it really represents is the opposite of the sun. Remember when we said the sun's rays are considered to be parallel? So those sun's rays that are coming down past the viewer here and past these poles, those rays are going down to an auxiliary vanishing point. See, they're downhill parallel lines going to an auxiliary vanishing point. So that negative sun is an auxiliary vanishing point for downhill parallel sun's rays. So let's then use the shadow vanishing point again to give the direction of the shadow. So we have the directions of these two shadows drawn like this. Now coming from the top of each pole toward the negative sun, we can find the length of these two shadows. So the shadows of these poles look like this. Like this. Okay? This is called negative sun. Oh, by the way, positive sun for this one. And this is negative sun. Negative sun. The sun is behind the viewer, and the negative sun, it can actually be called a source, even though it's not the source. It's the reverse of the source. All right, there's a third instance. We have positive sun, negative sun. The other one is called parallel sun, and that's when the sun's rays are coming down parallel to the picture plane. And that would be like this. We have a horizon line here. We don't have shadow vanishing point, and we don't have positive or negative sun in this case, but we do have the two poles. So let's see them here. The taller pole here, the short one here. Now this is an instance where I'm going to determine this as an artist. I've decided, okay, this is parallel sun. In parallel sun, we always assume perspective is drawn on a flat plane. So in that case, the shadows would be truly horizontal. Perspective is drawn on a flat plane. Those are horizontal. This instance, again, is called parallel sun. That means the sun's rays, again, are coming down parallel to the picture plane. Therefore, they are absolutely parallel to each other. The sun's rays are perfectly parallel here. There's no convergence one way or another. It's almost like a one-point shadow system. Huh? So we have then the shadow right here of these two poles, and then we just need to note that these lines are parallel to each other. All right. So let's draw some instances of how this works. Let's write in here. Let's draw the shadow of let's draw the shadow of a wall and a pole. And let's see, how am I going to do this? No, let's do it this way. Let's draw the shadow of a wall with a hole in it. So let's draw then the horizon line. Okay. And here's going to be a wall right here. And it's going off toward a vanishing point. So here's the wall. And I think in this wall, I'm going to draw a hole in the wall. And it will, I'm not going to deal with the thickness of the wall. That's a little too much for right now. But let's pretend that there's a hole in this paper-thin wall that looks like this. So the top and bottom of the hole are oriented toward the vanishing point, and there's a diagonal cut on it like that. So let's say there's a hole in the wall that looks like that. Let's draw right here, shadow vanishing point, SVP. Then above it, a line up to the sun. And in this case, it's positive sun because the sun is in front of the viewer. So we call that positive sun. And then let's use each side of this wall and treat that as if it were a vertical pole. And let's draw from the shadow vanishing point through the base of that pole for direction, and then through the other end down here for direction again. Then let's draw from the positive sun or source. Source, remember the source gives the length of the shadow. So drawing through there, boy, I'm going to move this up just a bit so we can see it here. Drawing from the positive sun through the top of that imaginary pole gives me, if that were a pole making a shadow, its shadow would be right here, if it were a pole, okay? Now, on this other one over here, I really don't need to do this. Actually, if I want to complete the shadow, I could just draw from this point to the vanishing point like that. But let's check it out anyway by drawing from the positive sun through the top of this imaginary pole. You can see it gives me the shadow over there. So you see the shadow of the wall then, the outer shadow of the wall is outlined right here. Now let's find the shadows. Let's find the shadow of this hole in the wall here. What I think I'll do here is make two blue lines that come down like this. And I'm going to draw through the base of those, treating those lines as if they were poles. Drawing through the base of that make-believe pole and through the base of this make-believe pole. Now I'm going to draw from the source through certain points on that pole and locate them this way. The source will give me the length of this part of the shadow by drawing through like this. So I found these points here and here. Then this is a little piece of real shadow, and I found its direction and length by using the shadow vanishing point and the positive sun. So let's find this other, the height of the part of this opening here, right here, and then drawing through the top of this cutoff section here. Now I need to make sure that this stuff kind of lines up. I know that this has to be parallel here because it's lined up with the vanishing point. Let's say one more thing here about shadows. The shadows of horizontal lines are parallel to those lines. So the shadows of horizontal lines will go to the regular vanishing point, where the shadows of verticals will go to the shadow vanishing point. So you see what I've got here? This line here is a horizontal shadow, so it aligns with the vanishing point over here. So let's find this top line here. We know it aligns with the vanishing point because it's also a horizontal line. So we'll bring this line out here, but we don't know where to stop it. Well, we can find out where to stop it by drawing through this cutout corner right here. Coming from the positive sun through there, down to here. This gives me that point on the ground. I'm going to cheat this over just a little to avoid that kind of a coincidence we're getting there. Yeah, like that. Okay. Now I found that point here, this point here, this point here, this one, and this one. So what I would do then is just go ahead and draw this cut off piece of shadow here, like this. So this is using a shadow from positive sun. Let's take another page and look at some examples of negative sun shadows. Natural. By the way, this series that we're doing right now is called Natural Light Shadows. So here's one that it shows kind of like what an illustrator might do in a story. Now I know this is a little bit of a corny story, but I'm thinking of the old Gunsmoke series on television. Marshall Dillon is in the Long Branch Saloon, and he's having I don't know what he drinks, whatever it is. And what's happening is out in the street, there's a guy trying to call him out to have a gunfight. Now, it's a bad guy because anybody by definition that goes up against Marshall Dillon is automatically a bad guy. So Marshall Dillon, it's only about 3:30 in the afternoon on a winter day, and he says, if I wait till about maybe 5:30 or 6, that guy's down at the east end of the street, I know that the sun will be in his eyes. So he just plays it cool and stays in there and waits until about, say, 5:30 on a winter day so that the sun is fairly low. So we want to construct this drawing in such a way that shows how this would look in an illustration. So what I want to do is draw Dillon here by drawing like what I call a cantaloupe here. And then I put a watermelon here. Watching a gunfight. Now, as an illustrator, how would you make use of the information about the shadow? First thing you want is you want to draw Dillon's shadow first because you want his shadow to go toward that guy. So what you might do is think of a vertical line down through here like this to the ground here, and let's draw from the base of that vertical through a base of the vertical on the bad guy here. Okay? Dillon's shadow will go this way, and it will reach to about here. So here's Dillon's shadow going off in this direction, something like this. Okay. There's Dillon's shadow. Okay, so now we can use this information to set up everything else. This was key. This was the main thing about shadows here, was Dillon's shadow was the most important shadow. So let's do this. Where that line meets the horizon, that is the shadow vanishing point, SVP. And directly below that, we have a line upon which we will find the negative sun. And we do it this way, by drawing from Dylan's head through the end of his shadow, down, whoop, didn't make my line long enough. Dylan's head through the end of his shadow will give us down here the source, or what we call negative sun. I'll just use neg sun here, neg sun. So now the bad guy's shadow, let's draw from the top of his head toward the negative sun in red here, and that gives us the length of his shadow is right here. So it's a lot more foreshortened than Dylan's. Let's see Miss Kitty's shadow. We may not even be able to get anything here. Here's the bottom of Miss Kitty. Actually, I'm going to stand her a little taller. She looks a little long-waisted there. Okay, here's Miss Kitty. Let's draw a vertical line through here and draw a line from the base of that toward the shadow vanishing point and from her head toward the negative sun. We find her shadow runs to about here. Here's her shadow coming out this way. All right? Whoops. It'd be better, I think, if that were in blue. Here's her shadow. It's kind of purple now. All right, then let's see the shadow of the bartender. It starts from his base, goes toward the shadow vanishing point, top of his head toward the negative sun. His shadow ends right at Miss Kitty's shoulder here. So there's his shadow. Let's see the barber's shadow comes out this way like this. Then from the top of his head toward the negative sun. His shadow ends right here between Dylan's arm and his body, right here. So now you see the shadow of these guys. Well, you see what this looks like. You've seen when the sun is low, so the sun is setting, how shadows will do this. They'll seem to converge toward a point on the horizon. And that's what we're having here. All these things are converging toward that point on the horizon. So this is an example of negative sun shadows.